Recording in progress.
I don't know.
Okay, we are going to go through the gifted checklist to create our GG records for all our students, so we will do that in bulk. So I'm gonna be going through the procedural checklist. The one on the Learning Center has not been updated since last year, but we have not had our training with Frontline yet. I don't know if there will be updates besides the dates. So I'm assuming once they have our training, then they will update that and post it. But everything seems to be the same, except for the school year in context. So just make sure you're working in the correct school year, because when we are working with gifted, gifted is school year specific. Okay, so it's something that needs to be added all year. The only thing that carries over year to year is the identified and the identified date. Everything else you do have to create if they're being assessed, if they're being served, or if they're being screened throughout the year. So those have to be done every year. So we're gonna start on task 1. Okay, so remember our JBSs and our ESCs do not report gifted data, so that is why Anita took off and Tracy dropped out of the Zoom, because they are not reporting, you are. Students must be identified on or before March 1st of the current school year. So just remember that. I think most of you guys, you know, you're going through your screenings usually earlier throughout the year, so well before that March 31st date. So also remember, every student can only have one gifted record per year, but you can determine what area that they're being screened in, if they're getting extra assessed in, if they're identified in that area, but it all goes to one record. Okay, so there are 2 ways that you can do this. One is at the district level and one is at the building level. Most of us in here, actually all of us in here, except for maybe the exception of Lori, and West Holmes is not with us on Zoom, because you guys have multiple elementary buildings. If they're not testing on the same date, you can put this in at the building level versus at the district level. The rest of us, we will be working at the district level, so you're just gonna keep the district level in context. So the first few things, and when we get to the point where you can switch to the building, I will let you know if there are different testing dates for your elementaries. So the first thing we are going to do is just create our default gifted rule, so we can assign a gifted record to all of our students. So I'm gonna first look up a student so you can see. So I'm looking at Timber here. He's my student. So if I look at him and I look at his gifted record. Okay, so my student gifted record, you're going to see this big red bar, because right now, nobody has been given a gifted record. So all students are like this. However, Tim had been identified previously. These are the only 2 things that do carry over when we're bringing the kids up, or promoting them. So all screening and all assessments get wiped out every year, and so we have to create the new gifted record for all of our students. Okay, so our first step is creating that default gifted rule. So we are going to go to our EMIS through our school administration. So if we're walking through it, management, school administration, and EMIS. Do you guys feel like you were just here earlier today? Because we were doing the attendance patterns. So now we're gonna look at our gifted. Okay, so we are going to create our gifted rule. So we are going to go to our gifted rule maintenance. And you'll see there's nothing here because it doesn't carry over from the previous year. So I'm gonna add a new gifted rule. And this is just gonna be my default gifted rule. Oops, if I can spell it right. I am not going to apply it to a specific grade level because we want all students to get a generic gifted rule. We can create additional ones that will override it if we know students are going to be screened. So for example, our third graders, they will be screened. We know our 11th graders will be screened with the ACT. But we want to create that gifted rule for everybody so they have a GG record that you guys can report. Because your gifted data is reported in all S collection windows. So we have to make sure that these are created. So again, leaving that blank. Nobody's gonna be screened through this because we just wanna create that gifted record. I'm gonna hit save. So you can see that it has now been created. Okay. So moving on to task number 2. Okay, so this is where you are going to create a gifted rule for a specific grade level that is going to be screened. So for example, maybe 3rd grade. So maybe it's for the fall assessment or it's for the spring assessment. Or our 11th graders, so they'll be screened with the ACT. So does anybody still use the SAT for their 11th graders? Because it is no longer used as a gifted screener. So I think most are on the ACT. Okay, so Lori, this is where if they are being screened at different times, especially like your 3rd graders, then you can move to the building level. So the rest of us, since we're just picking one grade level and you only have one building, you can keep it at the district level.
So you have to have testing.
You do have to have test dates.
They don't have them for me yet.
Okay, so yes, so you can always come back to this, just
Yeah.
flag task number 2, so
Yeah.
you can create these at a later time. So I'm gonna now create another gifted rule, so I'm still in the same spot, the gifted rule maintenance. I'm gonna add my new gifted rule. Maybe, there it goes. Okay, so if I know that we are going to be screening our 3rd graders, so this is gonna be my 3rd grade screening. Or I could put 3rd grade rule. Okay, this is the important part, making sure you're picking that specific grade level, so I only want to see 3rd grade. Okay, and then we know that the 3rd grade, they get tested in math and they get tested in reading, writing. Okay, so for our 3rd graders, they get screened, they take the ELA part of the test in the fall. So I'm just picking a random day just off the top of my head. So we're gonna say they get screened on October 16th. But then math, they're not getting screened until the spring assessment. So again, I'm just picking a random date. And we're gonna say February 25th. Okay, so we know they're being screened. And then we're gonna put in the screening dates.
So last year I had 2 elementaries, but this year I have 1, so I could just do all of this at the district level.
Correct,
Because we do 2nd and 6th grade, and then
yes.
the 11th grade, same thing.
And I actually made a mistake here, I was at the building level.
Oh, okay, I've done that.
I should have been at the district level.
I think I've done the opposite, where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, so I'm gonna actually throw this away. Cause I was looking at something else, so that was my fault. And I told you guys district level.
Yes, you did.
So we should be at the building level?
No, you should be at the district level.
Okay.
I was at the
Lord,
building level, so I did it
yeah.
incorrectly.
I did it wrong 1 year where I was supposed to be in the building. It was such a mess. It's terrible. We fixed it, but it was hard.
We should be putting in the correct date though.
Yes, if you know your dates, if you don't know your dates,
Come back.
you can always adjust it later if you think it's supposed to be, say, October 16th. I just picked that day because it's my kid's birthday. But if you think it's supposed to be that day and you find out it's wrong, you can rerun your rule. Okay, so again, I'm gonna do my third grade. Rule. For only my third graders, for math. And reading. Okay, and I'm gonna save this. Okay, and again, I'm doing this at the district level because I only have one elementary building. Lori has 1,000,000 elementary buildings. So if they are testing on different dates, she would create it at each of the building levels. So when you switch to the building level, so if I switch to my elementary. You will see that these are now locked because they've been created at the district level. But if I needed to create a rule here, I can modify it and edit it from the building level. Okay, but I'm gonna go back to my district because I'm gonna create everything at my district level. Now, so say today you put in October 16th because you thought that was the day that they're going to be screened. Okay, I can come back in here and I can modify by clicking on that pencil if I needed to. Okay, and then I would just save the updates.
Cause they do change it sometimes.
They do, or
They-
snow days
Yeah.
happen, or things like that. We talked plenty about snow days. Snow day might happen during spring testing. You just never know. So you can always modify it and then you would rerun your rule, and we'll get into that. So our next one that we would create would be for our 11th graders, because we know our 11th graders need to be screened as well. They're taking the ACT test, which is an approved gifted screener. So I am going to add that gifted rule. And again, you can name these whatever you want. I'm just kind of naming them so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Again, I am going to be picking my grade level. None of our districts have multiple high schools, but you can, bless you, you can still do this at the district level. The ACT screens for math, science, and reading or ELA. And then I know that it is going to be on February 11th. And they're all gonna be screened at the same time because it is one test. So they are all gonna have the same screening dates. And you can type them in, I'm just using the calendar wizard, so that's completely up to you. Okay. In the documents, if you wanna see all the approved assessments, there is a link here that will take you to the list of the approved assessments. I think most of you use like MAPS and WEA, iReady, those are all considered approved screeners. And you'll see it says SAT is no longer approved. Okay, now, I'm gonna tell you right now, for you today, this is optional, especially if you don't have those dates in there. I would do the first part that I'm gonna go through. The second part I would do as soon as possible, as soon as you get those dates in, because if you do the overwrites, like I'm gonna show you, anything that was manually entered after today can be overwritten. So again, like I know Veronica said she doesn't have the dates yet. She can do the first part, the second part, she's gonna want to do as soon as possible. Before she knows anybody's gonna put any information in. You might not be the person putting in if they're being extra, they have extra assessments. If they've been identified, that might not be you, that might be if you have a gifted coordinator. Don't laugh at me for those of you that don't, because some districts don't. It might be you, okay? So the next task number 3 is running the gifted mass update. This assigns a gifted rule to all of our students, so it creates that GG record. So remember when we looked at Tim Burr, he had that red banner across this top that said he did not have a gifted record. So we are gonna come through here the first time. I'm going to go to my gifted mass updates. It is going to ask what rules that I want to apply. Okay? Did I not save my 11th grade one?
No.
Didn't. I'm so sorry. Let me try this again. You would think it's my first training. Brenda did a better job.
Whose birthday is that?
October 16th is my,
Oh.
the twins.
Okay, well, that's mine.
Oh, I'll remember that.
Don't.
Make a note.
It's in a recording, we got it.
Okay. So now let's go back, let's try this again. So my gifted math update. Okay. If you don't know your testing dates for ACT and or your 3rd grade, you don't have to pull those over right now. If you do know and you put the dates in, everything's saved, I can pull those all over right now. I can do this all at once. But this is what I was saying, if you did not put these dates in, run the default gifted rule now, and as soon as you find out, run the other two. So that nothing gets overridden, because you do want to override right now. Okay, so I'm gonna run these the first time, I'm gonna override. Display the results, I'm gonna leave that checked so I can see it on screen. And I'm gonna hit submit. Okay, so you can see here, if I look through my list of students, my 11th graders, they got the ACT. So I know that they're gonna be screened. My 12th graders and 10th graders just got the default gifted rule. And then my 4th graders, I don't have every grade level in this district. They got the default rule, but if I find one of my 3rd graders, they got the 3rd grade rule. So I know that they're gonna be screened for math and ELA. Okay, so now let's go back and look at Timber, since we looked at him earlier. If I look at it, I do that all the time, if I look at his gifted, so going to assist student in gifted, his gifted record. Okay, so now you can see that banner is gone. Okay, but remember, he's a 10th grader, so he's not being screened. So that's why nothing is checked. But if we look at one of our 11th graders, so Terry, notice that he's being screened in those 3 areas. So that was that 11th grade ACT rule that we created, so it will automatically check these for all of our 11th graders. I didn't make up the names, okay?
It's cute.
So again, our identified and identified date will always carry over. Now, if I don't know my dates for my screening dates, okay, I can run through that 3rd grade rule again or the 11th grade rule again, overriding. But if somebody comes in here manually and checks something, when I run that rule, it's going to uncheck that. So that's why it's important to get that done ASAP. If somebody else updates the gifted records. If you're the person that does that, then you know when you put stuff in, okay, but just be aware of that.
Even though I'm not there.
Okay, so with that being said. Okay, so with that being said, I am gonna get a student in context, so task number 4 is, after the screening is administered, you are manually gonna update the assess for those students that are undergo further testing. Okay, so they're gonna be assessed more to see if they are identified as gifted. So you would put your student in context, so in this point, I have Terry. I'm gonna go to their gifted record, so SIS student gifted. And their student gifted record. You can type it in the go-to box too. Okay. So this part does need to be manually added, so if Terry is going to be screened again in math and science. I would check that. I would hit save. Okay, so now his record has been updated because he's going to be assessed further. Okay. Task number 5, and again, I don't know if you do this at your district. You might have a gifted coordinator that is working on this, but Terry has now been further assessed. He is gifted only in math, not in science. So I would come into my gifted record again. Check him that he's been identified. Once I check that he has been identified, you have to put in an identified date. So what date was the assessment, whatever it might have been, let's say it was September 11th. Put that in, and then I'm gonna hit save. So now he's been identified as gifted. Once identified, always identified. So this will carry over every year when you promote your students. Okay. Next is task number 6. If your district provides gifted services, so you're servicing them, you would check served and hit save. A real hard task. Okay, but here is the catcher, and they don't say it in the checklist. If you are serving a student, they then have to have a membership code, which is a 20. So either 205 or 206 membership code for the area that they're being served. So a 205 is they're being served by a gen ed teacher. A 206 is they are being serviced by a gifted instructor. Or GIS, I think they shorten it to that. Okay, so I don't know why they don't put it in here, but that's very important. So it's more than just clicking served. You do have to make sure they have those membership codes as well. And some districts identify, but they don't serve, or some certain classes, certain areas they don't serve. Task number 7, so this is page 11. I have notes from Sherry from previous, that none of our districts do this task of copying over the served from one year to the next. Does anybody want to copy that over? That means if they were served last year, you know for a fact that they're being served this year, or you manually check them. Okay. That was what the note was from Sherry, so I put it in my notes. Okay. Task number 8 is adding a new gifted record to a new student who comes in after the screening is administered. Okay, so I'm kind of gonna read this word for word. I'm not gonna create a new student to bring in, but if you have a new student that comes into the district, okay, and you have a gifted grade level rule, such as your 11th grader. So you have an 11th grader coming in. They're being screened for math on, and this is the example here. So this is a third grader. So the 3rd grader comes in, they're being screened for math on November 15th. And they're being screened for reading, writing on February 15th. If you run the gifted math update for that grade level rule, the new student that comes in, it will apply the screening for the date after they enrolled, so their admission date. Since the November 15th is prior to them being admitted, it will not check them as being screened. However, it will automatically check them as being screened for February 15th. Okay? Now, there's two things with that, that being said. It is suggested that you do rerun your rules periodically. So if I go into my gifted mass update. Okay, if I run these again, so maybe once a month, maybe once every couple weeks, I can rerun all of them. But you're not gonna override anymore. Okay, so the override is the first time to make sure it's getting forced out to everybody and everybody has the appropriate gifted rule. Then once you start entering the further assessment, you're adding identified dates and so forth, we're not gonna override the records. The override will clear out the screening column and it'll clear out the assessed column based on what the rule is. Yes,
How important are the dates?
the screening dates.
Like, for example, we give numerous grades, the NWEA math score, but we do it in the fall and the winter, but I don't put in two different screen dates, you know, like,
I would cause you can only put in one,
right,
so I would do the first one.
that's what I got. Okay,
Yeah.
that's, okay.
Yeah, because I mean, technically, that's the same for your third grade. Because they're
Right.
getting assessed in the fall and the spring for
That's
ELA. So you would do the fall screening, cause that's the first one that they can be identified at.
Okay, then when you actually know, so say you have somebody like an NWEA, they test in the winter. And then they don't test again, and I have a new enrollee come in the February, I can't run like. Am I jumping ahead?
No.
Okay, I can't run that rule because it says we assessed them, but we didn't because they came in after. the
After, so
assessment.
it'll be blank.
Okay,
So what will happen, and I don't have a student now, cause I didn't create a new student, but, so who's my other? Let me switch to the elementary. Rosebud. So what will happen, so say the student just came in, so it's after the screening date. I can just come to you'll just create the default gifted rule for them.
Mhm.
Or you can come here manually. And they're gifted, it would still say that line's gonna come across the top to say they don't have it. All you have to do is hit save.
okay,
Yeah,
Thank
so if
you.
you see that red box, you can just hit save and it will create it if you know they're not getting screened.
okay,
It is suggested in here that you do rerun those rules though, to catch any screenings that they might still be eligible for.
like the juniors.
Yes. Yeah, but if you know, for example, you know that a junior, if you're taking it on February 11th and a junior starts on February 20th, you know they're not being screened through you, but then maybe they're doing the makeup. You can put in their individual here,
Okay.
you can save it and then put in their individual dates. Okay. Okay, just remember after you start entering, the screenings and the assessments. Don't check that, the overwrite, you wanna leave that blank. So Appendix A in the checklist kind of goes through everything with screenshots, so it's kind of a nice reference. So task number 1 is creating the default gifted rule. So I showed this with, Timber. It just takes off that red box across the top. So once that red box is gone, the gifted record has been created for your S collection. Task number 3 was applying the specific rule to a grade level. So I added the 3rd grade rule for math and reading, so those screenings should be checked. If they need further assessments, you will see you'll have to manually check which area they're being further assessed in. Task number 5 is adding where they have been identified. Remember, if they are identified, with the identified, you also have to include the date. And then whether or not your student is being served or not, that would be the checkbox. If they are being served, don't forget to add those student memberships. Okay, 205 or 206. I don't know why that's not part of this, but maybe because, or maybe you're not adding it, I don't know, but do you guys add them?
Yeah.
Okay. And then again, this was like Tim, he did not have a gifted record at first, so you will see that. That red bar across the top, if you hit save, it will create the gifted record. But don't forget, rerun those gifted rules, so that if they do qualify for any of those screenings, it would populate those screenings checkboxes for you. Okay. Appendix B talks about a lot of the reports that are available. Now that your gifted records have been created, they should all be applicable. I said that right. I hate saying that in front of people because it always comes out blah, blah, blah. Because remember, when you're working within the analytic hub, your selections are only based on what is available. So if your students didn't have any gifted records, some of these drop downs wouldn't have anything because those gifted records haven't been completed. So there are 2 in the analytic hub. If I go to my analytic hub under my EMIS menu. And I'm not gonna run all of these, it fully describes everything that it's going to show there, but the gifted detail is a spreadsheet of each student, has whether they've been identified, a Y or an N for yes or no. So it's a nice little spreadsheet to have. The gifted summary is each student, so it's going to show each student. And then each of the areas that they could be gifted in, if they've been identified, it will also show the identified date. So it's a little bit chunkier of a report, but it has each student kind of separate versus just the details where it's the spreadsheet in each line. I did run these this morning, but I ran it on my computer, so they're not in here. So I guess I gotta do those again. So then we have some other gifted area reports. So if I go into my SIS students, I have. Oh, school. And then I have my student reports. Okay, so under student reports, I have several different reports. I'm gonna work from the bottom up because this one is very important, especially throughout the school year. We just ran the mass update, so we know every single school enrolled every student enrolled as of today has a gifted record. Once you start getting enrollees throughout the school year, you wanna make sure you're not missing anybody, so this gifted student missing record will list anybody that doesn't have a gifted record created. So run that periodically, especially when you get new students. Number 3, the gifted area students. And you can see they give little screenshots in here, so I'll pull that up so you can see this. So you can see it'll have what building it is, who the student is, and then it'll have each of the areas if they've been identified, and or it'll have the identified date. So that's kind of a nice one, but note. And I'm noticing a lot more reports are saying this. If the local ethnicity field on the general tab is not answered, it will not populate students. This is not required. So it is the, what is it, the summative race is the required field for EMIS, not the local ethnicity, so sometimes that is not completed. But there are more and more reports that I'm seeing that say this, so make sure that field is completed for your students on the general tab. And they have that in bold under the student gifted area report.
Shelley, do you think that's why I wasn't singing those statements?
Could have been, but
It's
well,
not.
It's not, oh,
The
good.
one student. How do I? Well, she's white, so.
I don't know if there's a bulk update for that because,
Let me see, there is another, the other little boy.
Because it's an acquired field.
well,
Let me see if the other little kiddo. Because it was appearing on the gifted detail, but not the gifted area. Yeah, and his local athletic category wasn't either.
you can update it. I would just be careful, you know, and you might have, if you bulk update them to a majority of your ethnicity groups. You know, you say you bulk update them to white, you'll have to go back through and manually change the other ones.
Okay.
But yeah, it is in there.
I think that's what it is, maybe.
Plus, they probably didn't have a gifted record unless you ran through that already.
Yeah, I mean, they did, and then she always runs the gifted area students. And I
Okay,
would tell her it's on the detail, but I don't know why it's on the area, so they have, like, both students have it, cause I put it in. So I
Yeah,
know it's
right.
there. But I couldn't explain to her why, and I'm like, well, we don't do the gifted report.
well, then that, if it's just that report, then yeah, that would be.
Yeah, let
the
me see
issue.
if they appear now, cause that makes me. Yeah, cause I couldn't figure it out, and I don't know.
How many of you just put it in anyhow? Just do it. The ethnicity category,
I don't.
you don't, just curious.
I
Just 'cause
know.
Shelley's right, there are more, they were talking in the S period collection training, they're like, yeah, you better put it in, cause, and that's exactly what she said. Because some of these reports are not gonna give you proper results.
It is in easy query.
What is it?
It's under general. So
Yes,
there's
it's
ma-
on their general, I was gonna pull it up here. It's right here on their general
Let's see
tab.
who you have.
So
and haven't.
this one is required. So this one is required, however, this one is not. And this is the one, why, I don't know, the reports are pulling from this one.
Or why it matters, since it's
yeah.
not required.
Right. Yeah, that's what
I mean, just probably like a programmer oversight.
Demographics, they can track, I guess.
Yeah,
they just appeared, Shelley.
Perfect.
So thank you guys.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. I think Heather Davis always says that if she's missing something, she makes her secretaries go into final forms and see if they can. You know, she has them at it, but
okay, yeah.
Yeah, we use that demographic information form in final forms, that's what we use, so we register them.
So is this a category in there? Okay.
Like, that's your top
We don't
one,
have.
and then you
we
have
don't
your,
see
yeah,
your side of final
Hispanic,
form.
Latino, and then you have the racial groups, so.
Got it,
Very good, so it's helping
Yeah.
you.
yeah.
And you won't have run into the problem.
Yeah, why you have to put it in that many times, I don't know, but
With, slightly different labels.
yes.
Report number 4 is your gifted student courses. So this is gonna list each student individually with all the courses that they have been assigned to. So these are their course section assignments, based on the student that has been identified gifted. The details reports. Okay, remember our regular reports running through here, they typically are in PDF format. So this is kind of similar to what you can get from the Analytic Hub, but the Analytic Hub puts it in a CSV. Where this is just a PDF of it. And then again, I already talked about, because this is probably one of the most important ones for you, making sure that all your students have that gifted record created. Okay. So again, remember, if you do need to modify something in your gifted rule, if I go back to my gifted rules. So I go back to my gifted rules maintenance because I am at the building level. I cannot modify these. Because I create them at the district level, so I can apply them to, as needed, I can apply them all at once. So if I go to my district level, I now have the pencil, or I can delete it or make it inactive if I'm not using it. So the only difference, and again, this is only affecting Lori and Jill, from at the building level, you would only see, like at each of the buildings, you would see that rule for that building, and then the locked ones that are created at the district level. So your list might look different. Okay, sorry, Tia, you put in a question. If a student transfers in and their record shows that they already have been identified as gifted, do we have to mark them as well? Yes, so if they were identified previously, they would be identified with you. Their final forms enrollment process, ethnicity is a required field, good, and that's what Laura at Orville said as well. Do we use the same date the district used before? Yes. So if they were identified on September 11th of 2023, then that is the date that you are gonna be, that you will use as identified. Because once a student is identified, you can't take that away. Now, that doesn't mean they have to be served. Because some students, they can be identified as gifted, but they cannot function in a gifted classroom. But yeah, once identified, always identified. Okay. Any more questions online and or in the room? Okay, well, thank you. Brendan and I both thank you, so. You guys still have
Oh, okay.
20 minutes. So get lunch and before you have to go back to the office. As always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put in a ticket.